Welcome you and all to another episode of the Global Latin Factor Podcast, where we talk about Latino everything. I am your host, Crispin Valentin. Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. You already know you got nothing to lose and so much to gain on YouTube, the Global Latin Factor, Spotify, all that. Thank you so much. And today we are talking about a woman whose name deserves way more weight in every way which possible in Latino history. And that's coming up right now. Today we are talking about Dolores Huerta. She's been in the news recently. However, she's been doing her work for so many years. A lot of people know the phrase "si se puede," but not enough people know what the woman behind what it is, that phrase. Not enough people know the organizer, the strategist, the negotiator, the labor leader, and the reason that phrase still hits so hard with a lot of force till this day. And that's why I wanted to do this in this particular episode, not just for a short version, not just a quick summary, not just a version where you hear her name mentioned and like we move on. No, not at all. Not here in history and not what we do. I wanted to talk about who Dolores Huerta was from the beginning and what she actually built, what she actually changed, and what she actually survived. What honor did she earn? What honors did she earn? Not only that, but schools and institutions that carry her name and a lot more, and why her impact goes beyond the slogan or an era. Dolores Huerta was born Dolores Clara Fernandez on April 10, 1930 in Dawson, New Mexico. After her parents separated, she was raised mostly on Stockton, California. Shout out to all my California gente. Her father had worked as a farmer, miner, and a union-minded activist. Her mother was a businesswoman. So, you can already see that matters, because when you look at her life later on in life, you can already see her roots. You already see how she was built and what was she seeing as a young girl. Working class, struggling, discipline, service, and a real sense of dignity that matters. Later, she became a teacher. Now, and this is one very important thing and moment of time in her story. She had said that she left teaching because she could not stand seeing children come to class hungry, needing shoes. That stayed with her. It's some of those little things that happen that you see all of a sudden it triggers something else. And instead of accepting that was normal, she decided to go after the cause of the suffering, not just the symptom. Now, that's when you see different kinds of people. There's people that do this, do that, but not Dolores Huerta. Dolores was the kind of person who she was. Some people just see the pain and feel it and feel bad for it. And then some people see the pain and decide they're going to do something about it. They're going to organize against what's causing it. Dolores Huerta was that second person. Before most people ever knew who she was and her name, she worked with the community and community service organizations, helping with voter registration and local civic issues. But she wanted more, and she wanted to help farm workers to be centered more. So in 1962, she and Cesar Chavez co-founded the National Farm Workers Association, which later became part of the United Farm Workers. She went on to serve as a major leader and vice president for decades. And let me not just stop there, because this was something that was very needed. And because it need to be said, Dolores Huerta was not just nearby. She was not just helping in the background. No, 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 no. She was the co-founder, as I mentioned only, and not only that, but she was not just another name in history. She was the co-founder. The co-founder. That matters because too many times and too many people still know the movement through the version of the history that gives us women less credit than they earn and they deserve. And again, but the record clearly states that Dolores Huerta was the co-founder, and she was central in regards to the movement. Then one of the biggest chapter of her life, the farm worker struggle that became known as throughout the nation, and throughout that, the Delano grape strike and the boycott movement that gained again national awareness. There's where people were really starting to see her power because she could speak, she could really say something. Yes, she could inspire, but she was also an operator. She organized, she built pressure, she mobilized supporters, she negotiated, she fundraised, she helped turn labor struggle into a national issue. And that's right, that made the big difference. That was huge for what was happening at that time. Being a public face is just one thing, but being the person who can keep a movement moving on the pressure of and help turn that sacrifice into actual wins, it's a different level. It's a different type of level, another level. Now, this is the real movement of leadership, women leadership. Now, let's talk about the phrase that almost everybody knows. Si se puede. Yes, we can, or yes, we can do it. Dolores Huerta is widely credited with creating it in 1972 during the fight against anti-union legislation in Arizona. That phrase did not come from branding. It came from struggle. Literally what was happening at that time. It came from people being told what they could do and could not do, and answering back with the belief and resistance and organizing power. That's what it stood for. That's what it meant during that time. That's why it's so important. That's why that phrase still works to this day. Even Barack Obama, as you know it, used it. Someone didn't credit her, but that's what it is. But you know where it came from originally. Yes, we can. It is not just a maybe, or it's not just a we'll see. No, si se puede means that, yeah, we can do it. Yeah, we can make it happen. And those words carry labor history inside of them. Another reason why Dolores Huerta matters so much is because of her work. Not only that, that work that did not stay as a level, it was a symbolism in regards to what she was doing. Her policy was very impactful. The White House credited her for the influential in winning the California Agriculture Labor Relationship Act of 1975, which gave farm workers a collective bargaining rights. She also helped secure disability insurance for workers, farm workers in California. That's many of the things that she did. That meant her legacy not only just was more than emotional, but it was also cultural. It was struggle. And I think that most important to say that because of a lot of people get celebrated for inspiration, Dolores Huerta also helped change what rights look like in real life, not just talking about it, not just protesting about it, but in law, in protection, in recognition, in organizing power. That's just a different kind of important. That's just a different kind of impact that you see in the community playing out in real life during that time. Now, let's talk about the cost, because this part should never be skipped. Dolores Huerta raised 11 children while organizing, traveling, negotiating, and speaking, and carrying out the pressure of the movement work. And At the same time, she dealt with sexism inside the space where it's supposed to be for justice. And not only that, but that is the part why her role was so minimized for so long in the public imagination as to what she really was doing and the cost. And there was a physical cost too. In 1988, during a peaceful protest in San Francisco, she was severely beaten by police and suffered serious internal injuries. She was a long road to recovery. She spent many months in recovery. So when people call Dolores Huerta strong, it's not just a passing by statement. It's not just, oh yeah, she's strong. No, that is what happened. That is not just some vague compliment of how literally strong she is. That's literally how strong she was. Now, let's get into her accomplishments and recognitions, because it's important to have the receipts of the undeniable work that she's done. In 1993, she became the first Latina inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. That's a major, major thing, not only just because of her, but because she showed how late the institutions were to promptly recognize Latina leaders in that level. Then, in 2012, President Barack Obama, which again I named, was the reason his campaign slogan was "Si se puede," awarded her with the Presidential Freedom of Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor in the United States that a civilian can gain. That is one of the clear signs that we're talking about in regards to the local figure and the niche activism that she was doing. We are talking about a national historical figure with lasting weight that is still presently here to this day. Then in 2015, Mexico made her a member of the Order of the Aztec Eagle, which is Mexico's highest honor to a foreign. Like foreign, what does that mean? Because she was born here. Remember that. Now that matters because now her legacy is not only recognized here in the United States, but it's also recognized in Mexico across the borders, and is honored all the way across the highest level of orders and in the other side of the border. Now, her official foundation lists recognitions including the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Awards, the UCLA Medal, and multiple honorary degrees from universities including Princeton and USC. More recently, in October of 2025, she received the Critics' Choice Icon Award for her lifelong dedication to social justice and advocacy. In April of 2025, Los Angeles County officially proclaimed April 10, 2025 as Dolores Huerta Day in honor of her 95th birthday. 95th birthday. That tells you her history is not just frozen in the past. It's currently happening at this moment. She's still being recognized in present time. Now, let's get to in regards to the schools and institutions that actually carry her name, because this is just part of the stronger way of showing her legacy that she's leaving behind. Currently, still, again, is alive. There's the Dolores Huerta Elementary School right here in Fort Worth, Texas, in the DFW area. There is also the Dolores Huerta Elementary in San Francisco Unified, and there's also the Dolores Huerta Elementary in Tucson Public School. Now, there's Dolores Huerta Middle School in Burbank Unified. And think about this, that not just one school, many schools. That means that children in multiple cities, in multiple states, are walking into a school with her name attached to it. Now, that is just huge. That's just such a tribute to be able to have somebody's name, Dolores Huerta, and going to school. That is like educational memory. That's going to be generational. That's the next generation learning under her name. And it goes beyond K through 12. At UC Santa Clara, Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas was named in her name back in 2022. The center says it brings together U.S. and international scholars to advance cross-border research and connect Chicano X, Latino X studies with Latin America studies. Latin America, the entire Americas, not just the US. That is serious legacy markers. That is serious power. It means that her name is now lives inside scholars' research and across borders of intellectual work. And there are street level honors as well. In Arlington, Texas, here also in the DFW, there was installed honorary street sign toppers for Dolores Huerta along with Pioneer Way and International Corridors in 2023. And again, believe that I've seen it in more places. There's another form of public memory in regards to visibility for her name. So when people ask whether Dolores Huerta really changed history, is that even a question? Is that even a question? The answer is yes. You can literally see it, not only but in streets, but in schools, in research centers, and Congressional Medal of Honor, the Medal of Honor that was awarded for her as well. That is what it looks like when somebody's impact moves out of speech into the actual physical world. It's not just words, it's actions. Now, let's talk about her global impact. But I want to keep it grounded. I want to keep it's a little bit more grounded to it. Dolores Huerta work comes out in very specific places. Farm workers in California, Mexican American communities, labor rights, and civil rights. But not only that, the reach of her example goes way beyond even wider. Mexico, again, gave us the highest honor for a foreign in of the work that she's done. And the UC Santa Clara Research Center focuses across borders to other places, so it's making it be more global. And the documentary and academic and civic attention around her shows that her influence expands way beyond one movement, way beyond one generation. Her impact travels through labor organization or labor organizing, women's rights, leadership, Latino civic power, and immigrant rights advocacy. Her foundation today continues organizing around civic engagement, health, education, and community leadership. So, when people talk about legacy, and they just throw the word around, we have an amazing example that is in history now as to the work that she's done. And she is still very active for her work. Now, for people who want to actually watch something of hers, the main documentary that right now is currently out, and it's out, there's so many of them, but Dolores Huerta, directed by Teeter Bratt, that presents through PBS Independent Lens. PBS describes it as a portrait of civist icon Dolores Huerta and her lifelong fight for racial and labor justice. There's also the newest 2025 short film documentary, Seeds of Change, the life and legacy of Dolores Huerta, which, again, you can go ahead and check it out, which gives the conscious and the current look of her life and legacy. That matters because it shows her history and her story is still being told, is still being framed, and is still being revised right now as we speak, as you've seen in recent news and things that develop. And that's right, that brings it to present moment. In March 2026, Reuters reports that Dolores Huerta publicly accused Cesar Chavez of sexually assaulting her for decades or many decades ago, and that disclosure was led by a wider public reckoning about the farmers' work movement history and how the Dolores Huerta role has been understood and remembered. Now, I want to be very careful when it comes to this, and I want to be very careful when I talk about that. This episode was not just for turning trauma or into content. This is just exactly why it's so important to be like historically and accurately, because it is forcing a lot of people to revisit the movement with a fuller understanding of the power and pain and silence and the way that women can be a central part of history and still be undercredited at the same time. So honestly, that's just that fits a large story in regards to as well, because Dolores Huerta should never be being reduced to just a side figure at all. Again, co-founder, not after being the actual co-founder of the movement, not after shaping labor laws that literally people get to live now, not after creating one of the most recognized faces in organization history, not after raising 11 children while doing all that, not after earning the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and not only that, but after receiving and being the very first National Women's Hall of Fame Latina many years after all the work, not after the schools and the streets and the university research centers that carry her name. And again, you can see many streets. So when somebody says Dolores Huerta, I don't want you to think people as just a side figure or somebody that was part of. She was very central. I want you to think of co-founder, strategist, organizer, negotiator, labor leader, civic rights icon, and one of the most important Latina leaders in American history that America has produced out of Mexican roots. And some of the simplest things that you can do is Dolores Huerta did not just witness history, she's literally living it and part of it and things that we get to do. So she helped build it and she survived it. And now history has one choice, but to carry her name moving forward as all the work that she's done. If you got something out of this episode, make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop us a comment, let us know what part have you looked into the Dolores Huerta that you heard about that maybe you didn't know and you were aware that she was such a central figure, the actual co-organizer, and leave us a comment about that. Again, and if this episode inspired you, this episode educated you, once again, let us know in the comments or anywhere where you're at on our social media. And once again, thank you so much for joining another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast. Remember to subscribe right now. Why? Very important for you to be here, to be part of the community, to be part of the things that we're putting out, to be part of all the amazing things that we continue to cover and amazing individuals such as Dolores Huerta and such all the guests that have been here on the podcast. And remember, we are just like you. We are people. We are humans. We are the spice and flavor in this melting pot that it is the world. Till next time. Bye.